Hello, my name is Zachary, otherwise known as Remember, and today I will be sharing my life story and testimony. So, I'm going to start at the beginning and I'm going to go throughout the years. I'm going to try to hit the significant points of my life. Let's go. So, at age 3, I was introduced to video games. By this point, my dad and mom have divorced. I was born in 2000, so I should also stated, yeah, I was born in Kentucky in a few small towns. I say a few because we moved around a little bit as in my early ages. But the main thing was 3 years old. I was introduced to video games and split custody with my parents. So my mom and dad are divorced. My mom has my stepdad, and they started having kids. I think I got my sister like in 2003, 2004. My full-blooded sister, my mom and dad had a year after me, and she's still with me today. And essentially, the reason being introduced to video games is significant because this would become a huge part of my life going forward. So also the split custody thing would also become a huge part of my life going forward. So uh like I just remember I hated being with my mom and my stepdad. Like my mom yelled and screamed a lot. I remember that. I remember I don't actually remember too much of my stepdad early on, honestly, because he was always at work. But I do like if he's probably unpleasant regardless. But like I said, in my early years, I didn't really interact with him too much or see too much of him, so I didn't really know him at that young of an age. I just knew my mom. I did not like my mom. So my dad was deployed in 2000 due to legal reasons because he was either going to have to go to jail or serve in the army. Actually, I guess I'll talk about that for assaulting my mother because my mother tried to leave us and she neglected us and uh so like after my sister was born in 2001, I guess like my mom growing up, like I understand now, but she had a rough childhood. My stepdad had a rough childhood. My dad, I mean, some people say we all have rough childhoods. I beg to differ on that, but my dad had like an okay one from what I understand, but he had like anger issues. And the significance of this is um he ends up going to war basically in Iraq, like after like right after the twin tower thing and everything. So like it is war basically, and he got deployed over there because um yeah, he stayed there for a year, from I think 2001 to 2002 if I'm not mistaken. And in that time he meets a girl over there. He struggled with a lot of stuff like that like struggled with suicide, but kept going because he had pictures of me and my sister. And my mom met my stepdad, and basically, like, the typical guy goes to war and gets cheated on while he's gone because take too long to come home. Tight beat. So by 2003, yeah, he got discharged honorably. So he only stayed there a year because they made him do like some unlawful punishment where they had to like jump out the back of trucks or something. And basically from that, he messed up his knee really bad. And I think to this day it's still messed up, but I think he's had like surgeries on it by now and stuff like that. And then he wasn't tested for like PTSD or anything like that, so that would affect my father and our relationship moving forward, and his relationship with his family, which would end up becoming to be my stepmom. So he met my stepmom over there, over like on a forum or something online, through some medium, a computer or a pager or whatever they had back then. I don't know. And she already had a child. She lived in Texas. We're all the way out here in Kentucky. So he gets discharged. They decide to meet up. Bada boom, bada bang. They get married. Bada boom, they have a child. So they basically start their own little family with my stepsister from a guy that she had a kid with from some guy from Michigan. And then they ended up having a kid that was theirs. So them two daughters, and then this whole split custody thing with me and my sister, with living with my mom 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, basically. It's mom's, and then at the end of Friday, we come out here on the weekends. So we do that for literally ever. And yeah, that was life. That was life in terms of the family dynamic. So introduce video games, split custody with the parents, and dad's messed up in the head, mom's messed up in the head, stepdad's messed up in the head. Don't know that yet. And I'm just a 3-year-old, 4-year-old child at this point. So life goes on. I get to 6 years old. This is when I would learn to masturbate, and I wish I was making this up, but I learned to masturbate at 6 years old. And this is significant because I never got caught, and I never had the talk or got told to, like, hey, let's not do this at 6 years old. Because they watched adult shows. Because I don't want to watch cartoons, so you're subjected to adult shows at, you know, a young age, and you have to watch them because you have to sleep in the living room, and you do what you're told or you get punished. So that's what we did. So there was basically an episode of South Park where they lock Butters in the bathroom and they tell him to yank his thing till white stuff comes out. And even though I was only a 6-year-old kid, I for some reason knew what wanking my thing was somehow, and began to do that. Not maybe obviously, but I couldn't like ejaculate, so I just masturbated, and it felt really good. That's all I remember. So I started doing that. I don't think it became like a problem, so like per se. Early on, I just think like looking back, like yeah, I still shouldn't have been doing it, but like not much I can really do. I'm a 6-year-old kid, don't know what's going on. Yeah. So anyway, also grew up listening to music. My dad was in a band, so I like rock and heavy metal. I got introduced to rap music in like 2007, I want to say. Eminem, Not Afraid. My mom liked to listen to the old school like Eminem stuff like that. Um, and rap music would come to play a large part in my life and my behavior and uh, my expectation of life moving forward. So that actually, it's not like just, hey, I liked rap music. It was like, no, this would go on to negatively affect me, in my opinion. Um, at least the music I was listening to, like at that young of an age, like. Ugh. But anyway, moving on. 8, 9, 10. Don't remember too much other than just like awful people. Lived in a trailer park. Got manipulated into taking all my clothes off with my sister in a shed, and they manipulated us to kiss each other. And then we got rocks thrown at us because apparently we were freaks, when in reality these people manipulated us. So then we ran home basically. So that was awesome. Not really, obviously. So yeah, just not great, not great. All the while, we do have good times when we come out here to my grandmother's house, and then we come out here on the weekends. And next door is my grandfather's mother, Mimi. And this is when I would meet my cousin, Jared. I mean, I met him when I was just a little kid, but in terms of like me being conscious, and developing like a relationship with my cousin, it was about like what, 5, 6, like conscience wise. I'm not saying we didn't have a relationship prior to this, but anyway, yeah, moving on. Um, this is significant because this would give me a taste of life, and I loved it out here. Like, it was great. Nobody yelling, nobody screaming at each other. I'm not getting manipulated into doing weird shit, and everything is fine and dandy. Seemingly so. We come out here, we have a good time. My aunt, and my uncle, they live next door still to this day. My grandma's sweet. My grandfather's mother is sweet. And yeah, I would never come to know why until recently, but that'll come into play later. So, 11 years old. By this point, the Xbox 360 had come out. Something I didn't mention, I also grew up watching YouTube. I think I started watching YouTube in like 2005, 2006. I'm pretty sure I was introduced by my father to it. And I watched the popular show at the time, Equals 3 by Ray William Johnson. Loved that show. I would introduce my cousin to it, and we watched that. We It was that, YouTube videos on like Call of Duty, and then like music stuff. So like, the Eminem Not Afraid video, and then Your Favorite Martian, which was like a music group that Ray William Johnson did with like the people he did a show with, or whatever the case was. But so this is significant because YouTube has played an extreme part of my life as well. Um, so yeah, there's that. So 11 years old, I'm in 6th grade. I basically kind of know by this point things aren't right. I think by this point, because like I think when I was 8, we moved out of the trailer park into a house, like on my mom's side. My dad, I didn't live with. I didn't live with my grandparents. All that was weekend stuff, because split custody. I'm with my mom Monday through Friday, so I have to go to school on her side, and we stay there 90% of the time. So we live in this Amish house by the time I'm 11, and by this time I'm already like knowing, like, all right, like things aren't right. Like, I grew up not liking going home to my mom because she would scream at me, which made school difficult. It made paying attention difficult. My stepdad doesn't like me or my sister because there's these 2 kids in his house, and they're here because my mom wants them here, but he didn't particularly want us there, and it was just weird. So yeah. But by this point, this would begin my first addiction, which would be other than video games and YouTube. Although I'm not sure if I was addicted to those things. Like, addiction at 11 is crazy. But I would be introduced to cigarettes by a friend that my dad hung out with. So one weekend in 2011, I was introduced to uh, a childhood friend, Austin, and me and Austin basically got to know each other because my dad was in a band with his dad, and they figured we'd like hanging out with each other, and they were right. He was awesome. We were goofy, but we were different. You know, he was like more of a country boy, city boy kind of thing, and I was just more of like I don't even know what I would describe myself at this point. I'm just like I saw myself as a city boy, but really I'm just this lost kid. And honestly, he probably was a little bit too, but he seemed a little bit more um I don't know. He had muscles like even though we were like young, and he seemed I don't know, he just seemed a little bit more well versed in life like but we got along well. We hung out at this motel. His stepmom basically was the manager of, so we got to do like devious little things we shouldn't have been doing. Like we could walk through the pool area after everybody's asleep, and just stupid stuff like going up to the freaking front desk and telling them the vending machine ate our dollar, even though that we didn't have any money to begin with, but they gave us $1 anyway. Just basically stupid kid stuff. This is significant though, not because of all that. This is significant because he would introduce me into cigarettes. Now I knew what cigarettes were at this point because my dad and my mom smoked. But obviously, I would like I at this point, like at school, I think we've had like the Dare program and an off. If you don't know what that is, it's basically like an anti-drug program where an officer shows up to your school and is like, "Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad," basically, but extended for like an hour or like however long school was when I was a kid, like 45 minutes maybe to an hour, something like that. So I knew what drugs were, and I knew drugs weren't good. Okay, but peer pressure. So I knew what peer pressure was. Anyway, one day he decided I'm gonna steal a cigarette from my dad's cigarette pack. Boom. We go behind a dumpster. He peer pressures me. I'm like, no, I know what peer pressure is. You can't peer pressure me. He ends up peer pressuring me anyway. That's not when I got addicted to cigarettes though. On the subsequent visits, his dad would go on to hide his cigarettes, and he would be still infatuated with wanting to smoke. So he had this great idea that we need to go around to the other motels in the area and basically do something called butt diving, where we take cigarette butts from the ashtrays and of the other motels and smoke them basically. Since we couldn't get, cigarettes from his dad's cigarette pack. So that's what we did. So this went on for a while. And he would also introduce me into a rapper named Lil White and a song called Oxycontin. And in the song, it's talking about getting high and stuff. And this is the first time I would be introduced into what getting high was. So I quickly became interested because the song sounded mesmerizing. He just played it on his like little phone or whatever, but like the lyrics just I don't know, like talking about getting high and fly, and I was like I want to do that. That sounds fun. Like I've seen things flying like Spider-Man and like yeah, that I want to do that. And he essentially told me like you need drugs to do that, and I was just like, all right, like what's drugs? So I go home to my grandma's, I take her laptop, I start looking up what drugs are, how to get high. Turns out drugs are illegal. I'm like, oh, who would have known? That's crazy. I can't just go to the store and get this, whatever. All like I'm an 11-year-old kid. Like that's crazy. So never got my hands on anything, thank God. But that wouldn't last very long. Later on in my life. So also at this point, I have been introduced to another rapper named Hobson. and I listened to his music video, Sag My Pants, and I was introduced into this kind of music. Which would go on to do good and bad things to my life. So, after the cigarette thing and the butt diving, since I was researching all the drugs and everything, and I realized I wasn't gonna get my hand on any drugs, like I learned that you can like huff whipped cream, but I thought that was stupid. And we also, I don't think we had, I think we did actually have whipped cream, but it didn't work. So I thought it was stupid, and I just ended up like blowing whipped cream into my mouth. So once again, thank God I didn't end up doing that. Um, but I was curious, like, okay, if I can't get cigarettes, if we can't get cigarettes, what's an alternative? You know, and I can, next time I go hang out with Austin, I can tell him about it, whatever. And it turns out it's tea bags. So if so, there was like a little thing on it. Like I think I looked up like other things to smoke on Google or something, and it was like, yeah, you can just rip open a tea bag. I'm like, oh, we have that. Like, mom makes tea. She makes sun tea, and my grandma makes tea on the pot on the stove. We have tea bags. And at this, my mom and my dad had like cigarette filters because they would occasionally roll cigarettes as a cheaper alternative to buying like brand cigarettes. So I decided to start stealing cigarette filters, which wasn't very difficult because like they had like thousands of them. So stealing like a few cigarette filters to pack them with tea was basically as easy as stealing candy from a baby. So I began doing that, began to realize how stupid it was, but kept doing it anyway. And then eventually got caught by my stepdad one day when I went into the basement of my mom's house and tried to smoke a cigarette filter tea cigarette, basically. I thought I was slick, and I thought the basement, since it had like insulin in the like ceiling, and that like tea is not that, like, yeah, there'll be smoke, but like it's not gonna smell that bad. Like it'll just be the smell of burning paper, which dissipates like way quicker than like cigarette smoke. But it went right through the floor, and they smelled it, and I got caught. Like my stepdad came down to the basement and was like, "You thought you were slick, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I got caught smoking tea, and this would be very significant because my mom, after grounding me, would call my grandma and tell her about it, which was weird because my mom low key hated my grandma, so I don't know why she would call my grandma to tell her anything about her son and what she's doing. But apparently, this was significant enough for, my grandma to be notified about, which didn't really matter because we didn't have anything to like smoke out here. Like I tried it here, but all we had was like paper, and the paper would just burn, and the tea would just fall out of the paper. So like I couldn't even smoke tea here. Like I could only do it at my dad's house or my mom's house. And I think mainly I stole the cigarette filters from my mom because, if she found out, it wouldn't be as bad. But if my dad found out, like, I don't know what I thought, but regardless, I guess I stole cigarette filters from them both, to be honest. That's not the point. The point is, well, actually, yeah, there is a point there. Why did you have cigarette filters just out and about? Like, it's not like they were hidden. Like, they were just there, like on top of a thing. All I had to do was get a chair and get up there. Like, they were right there. Like, they weren't. I didn't have to like go into a dresser or like a closet or like no. They were just out. So maybe there is a point there. Like, don't do that. Anyway, So my grandma gets told I smoke tea, and then she found out I was doing the cigarette butt diving thing. Cause I guess I don't know if I told my mom or they found or like Austin's dad found out we were doing it or I don't fully know. What I do know is that my grandma did not like the fact that I was doing this, so she was very concerned, as she is. So she had this great idea. Well, it wasn't her idea, but essentially, she figured, or she was concerned, and apparently she was talking with my aunt one day, who lives in Virginia. So she's not even here in the state. She's just on the phone with my aunt, who I think I've met, but like didn't really have like a relationship with. But she was a sweetheart. But still, she decided to tell my grandma, "Hey, if he's doing this, he's gonna end up getting a disease. This is dangerous. We gotta do something." So instead of setting me down and telling me to not do this or I'm gonna get in trouble, I get, or she recommended my grandma buy me cigarettes. So weeks go by sometime in this period, like shortly after the I got caught with the tea thing, maybe in a week or two, this information was relayed to me, and I was on board all the way. I was like, "Yes, that is so cool! Like, what? I'm gonna be so cool now." Like, I finally get to see what I'm missing out on. Like, my dad does this, my mom does this. They tell me not to do this, but apparently I must be missing out because they do this every single day. So even though they tell me not to do this, I want to do this because I know I'm missing out. So one day my grandma's taking me home um, on a Sunday after, like, because of the split custody thing. Like, so Friday after school, 2, 3, 4 o'clock, grandma shows up, picks us up, takes us out here. We stay, Friday night, Saturday night, and then Sunday afternoon we go home. For the most part, there'd be some days where like we'd stay Sunday night, but we'd have to go to school, and then we go right back to mom's the next day. So she's taking me home, and I was like, "Hey, you said you're gonna get me, cigarettes. Let's do this." And at first she was like, "Nah, that's not right. I don't want to do that. Like, maybe we shouldn't do that." And I was like, "Come on, whatever." Yeah. And like, I was like, "I'm gonna keep butt diving or whatever." Even though if I was just told, "Hey, you're gonna get grounded if you're caught doing this," I think I would have stopped eventually. Because I don't think I would have kept getting like wanting to get grounded. Because honestly, like butt diving was like extremely tedious, extremely monotonous. Like constantly having to bend over, look down on the ground because my mom, like, she always kept like cigarettes in a can, so like it was hard to get them out of the can. Plus, I didn't want to be stealing cans because then she'd get suspicious. Like, I probably would have just stopped, butt diving. Like, it was just like a phase thing, and it was like a cool thing. But no, 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 no. Buy me cigarettes. Great idea. So we start doing that. I get my first pack of cigarettes, Pall Mall menthols, and I would begin smoking basically. And I never stopped. This would become a normal thing. It wasn't a phase. Like, I think they thought If we do this, he'll get bored. He'll realize how nasty they are. He'll get sick. He'll stop doing it. That is not what happened at all. So, the saying, good, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So I think they had good intentions. And plus, they grew up, like, I'm not trying to defend what they did. I understand why they did what they did. Like, they thought it was going to be a phase. I was going to quit, whatever. And then they also thought, they'd rather me to be doing this than butt dive, and risk getting like a disease or, whatever, herpes or HIV or something. Um, and then like, what was the other thing? And they grew up in like a different time where cigarettes were like accepted, and like they grew up in an era like where people were still smoking at school, and like, so I understand it. I get it. But yeah, I began smoking at 11, and this would go on to affect my life very significantly. So now it's 2012. I get my first smartphone, a Galaxy S2. This is significant because I start having basically free reign of YouTube. Like now I have a computer in my pocket that I can access anywhere. Uh, and my dad got it for me. I'm able to take it to school. The only thing I wasn't able to do was go over the data limit, which eventually I would end up doing. And my dad would kick me out, take my phone, and then sell it for gas money. That was interesting. $10 over the data limit. I get kicked out of the house and get told I'm a piece of shit. Like, and I didn't even mean to do it. Like, I was sorry. But anyway, thankfully he called my grandma and she got me like a little mini phone. Not that I should have had a phone at all, but I had a phone. Social media, mainly YouTube. This gave me free reign to listen to all my music. I start listening to Hobson. I start listening to like basically just Hobson and the Funk Volume Crew. That just started becoming a thing. And he had like a lot of like he had a song on depression and suicide. So that's when I learned about depression and suicide. Or like he had mentioned it, and then I looked it up. So then I wanted to feel like he did, so I convinced myself I was depressed and suicidal. And I had a girlfriend at the time, so I told her, I was like, yeah, I'm depressed, life sucks, go on without me, whatever. Like, bro, what? All because I listened to a Hobson song. Uh, Not blaming Hobson, by the way. If anything, it's my parents' fault for giving me a phone. Also, I think in 2011 at Christmas, I got a PSP, and this would be significant because um, so I still masturbated up to this point. I just have never seen pornography. So I didn't really know like what sex was. I don't think, and if I did, maybe I only seen it on like TV. So like maybe I knew what it was, but I've never like seen porn. So I never like masturbated to porn. I always just tugged my thing because it felt good. So I would end up being introduced to porn. Because some girl came out to visit here at my grandma's, and then the following weekend I go to my dad's. Because sometimes I would go to my dad's too. I forgot to mention that. And then my sisters mentioned it to my stepmom because the girl that came out here that they were hanging out with, I was in my room, like in here playing video games, and they apparently were out there getting told about RedTube. So my sister told, hey, this uh, Zoe girl told us about RedTube, whatever. You know, I don't know, and apparently there's naked people on there, whatever. So my stepmom looks it up, and she's like, "Oh my god, no, don't look this up." I go home the following Sunday. Uh, or maybe it was Monday. It was like Sunday or Monday, and I'm upstairs. It's dark. About to go to sleep to go to school tomorrow, and I'm like, "Hey, I should look up RedTube. I wonder what that was all about." She had like a pretty severe reaction to it, so I was like, I mean, if she reacted like that intensely, like I was just curious. I was like, I got to see what that was all about. So I look up RedTube. Boom, there it is, porn. Fall in love pretty much immediately. And I think that was the first night I masturbated to pornography. Moving on, I would meet a friend that would introduce me to. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Another significant thing I forgot to mention is I was also prescribed amphetamines, some off-brand Adderall, dextromethorphan, extended release, 50 milligrams. This will become significant because apparently I couldn't pay attention in the school because I had ADHD. But the reason I have ADHD is because I can't pay attention to school because I go home to people screaming at me for literally doing nothing wrong. And me constantly talking about how I want to go home to my grandma's house, but then getting told by my mom, "You are home," and then I'm telling her like, "No, I'm not. I don't like it here," and she doesn't want to hear that. So she would get mad at me for basically not loving her, but I mean, she was scary. I didn't like her. So, yeah, I would get prescribed amphetamine in the 6th grade. Terrible. Like, I remember I took it, get on the bus. I was more awake than I've ever been in my life. Like, I noticed every blade of grass, every detail, like, every bump that the freaking bus hit. And then I'll go to school. I zoom through all of my assignments. Turns out I'd find out later that I was getting high on it because I didn't actually have ADHD. And it turns out if you have ADHD, you don't actually get high on it. It just helps you. It just helps you focus like it's supposed to, accordingly. But if you don't have ADHD and you take it, apparently it just gets you stupid high. Like it still does what it does, but apparently, so whole time. I mean, it still did what it did regardless. But I got high, and I would find out later that my sister would get prescribed this like a year or two later. Like when I was 13, she was like 12, and she started taking it. My brother took it. He was like 7. He's like 6 or 7, and he took it. Come home, don't want to take it. Mom basically tells me you have to take it. I want to tell her the only reason I have to take it is because of her, because I know that that's the reason I can't pay attention in school. But I can't tell her that because she isn't gonna see that because she's not gonna admit that I'm being abused and that she's hurting me because she loves me and it's not that bad there. And suck it up, you're not dying, and whatever other nonsense. So basically, I said, I don't want to take it. I'm not going to take it. She was like, you have to take it, or I'm going to shove it down your throat. So I was like, all right, whatever. I'm taking it, I guess, whatever. So there's that. I then would become addicted to amphetamine and start abusing it. Within, like, I think a week or two, I ended up stealing an extra pill from my brother and took two. And thus would begin my amphetamine abuse. Now, I only did that, like, a little bit at first, and it wouldn't get bad until a little bit later. So, moving on. Sorry for the backtrack. I just, amphetamines, that was a significant thing in my life. 13, or like 12, you know, okay, so cigarettes, porn, amphetamine. Free access to social media, basically. And sorry. Yeah, just toxic household. Mom smokes in the house. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, my mom has always smoked in the house. My dad didn't, but my mom did. That was terrible. Uh, so by the time I'm 11, I know that God is a thing. Like, I've been to church, people have talked about it, but I'm like, nah, like, ain't no way God exists. And I'm like, if he exists, he does not exist for me. So I become an atheist at 11 years old. At 12 years old, after having a nightmare where I appeared to myself in a dream as a demon, I would pledge my life to the devil in this very room by looking at the floor and swearing my allegiance to the devil so he gives me everything I want. So I pledge my life to the devil. Turns out you can't do that. You either just live a life of the devil or don't. Or yeah, you either live a life of God, like do God's will, or you live a life of the devil. So I do that. Didn't think anything of it. I think I just did it because, like, the music I was listening to, the funk volume shit and all that came across probably a song, or who knows. There was other people like Twisted and Insane and like all this music I was listening to basically. So yeah, there's that. But physical world stuff, like porn, all this stuff, whatever. Anyway, I'm trying to get to the next point. So, seventh grade comes around. I get my first girlfriend. I think by this point, I'm smoking cigarettes, but it's not like crazy. And I'm skateboarding. I'm listening to this music. I've watched pornography, but I'm not like addicted to it. And I'm not like addicted to masturbation. I kind of just live my life. Like, mainly, I was mainly in video games. Like, that was mainly what I was doing. Video games and YouTube, like, and then obviously school, but I hated school, so for the most part, anyway. So I get my first girlfriend. And that lasted about a year. She breaks up with me because her ex-boyfriend came back from Michigan, and he was a Christian and I was an atheist, and she didn't like the fact I was an atheist, so she wanted to get with him. So in 2012, the summer of 2012, I basically get broken up with, and then like seventh, or no, was it eighth grade? Yeah, eighth grade was starting when I was like 13. Or no, like when I was, yeah, I was still, yeah, because I was born in 2000, and then, yeah. And my birthday's on the, maybe I shouldn't say that. But anyway, but yeah, essentially, actually, does it even matter? Yeah, my birthday's on the 14th. But, so, 12 years old, summer, I meet a kid that rides my bus that lives down next to my mom. But he's up here, up at this church down the road from here at my grandma's. So I skateboard up there and I see this kid sitting there. I saw just a kid sitting there, and then I was like, "Oh my god, that's the kid that rides the bus with me." So shout out to Caden, was good. So we'd end up becoming friends. 6 months later, he introduces me to weed. So boom, I get introduced to weed at 12. And then I fell in love with weed, and it's the only thing I ever wanted, ever, all the time, for the rest of literally eternity. Nothing compared. I fell in love with weed. I fell in love with mixing my cigarettes with weed. Fun fact: when I first started smoking cigarettes, not really a fun fact, but I didn't even learn to inhale until 6 months in. So by this point, I'm full on smoking cigarettes. I'm full on addicted. Like, I'm inhaling them. I smoke like a pack or two a week. Eventually, I start getting up to 3 packs a week. Um, and so yeah, I'm going down to his house 2 miles from here to, like, we didn't like he. The weed wasn't the main thing. We started hanging out because like I wanted a friend to hang out with. But like 6 months later, once I got introduced to the weed, I ended up falling in love with the weed, and I ended up starting to want to only hang out with him to smoke weed. And if he didn't have weed, I didn't want to hang out with him because not because I hated him, but being high just didn't compare to not being high. And it also, like, it was nothing like the Adderall, so like it was like blissful to me, like it was the greatest thing of all time. It was funny, it was interesting. It I felt like amazing while I was high. So I fell in love with weed at 12 years old. So 2012 November, Black Ops 2 comes out. This is significant because this would become a huge part of my life at the time anyway. And I basically would try to become a professional Call of Duty player, but in reality, I was just a hyped up kid that drank too much caffeine, ate too much McDonald's, and took Adderall. So once eighth grade started, I was depressed because my girlfriend left me. And I had abused my Adderall in the past, albeit only a few times. So after getting left for a quote unquote Christian, he turns out this guy that she left me for is in my first period class, and he sits right across from me, like literally 5 feet in front of me. And he comes in talking about how he just drank and smoked, and I think he even said he had sex or something. And then I don't know if he said that, but I know he said he drank and smoked. And I just thought, like, at this point, I'm like, I know my grandmother next door, my grandfather's mother that I talked about earlier. She was a Christian and she believed in God. And even though I didn't believe in God and I was like, there's no way God's real, because if he is real, I wouldn't be in this house living here, while I have to go to school and kids get to go home to daddy and mommy and eat dinner, and I get to go home to mom and my stepdad screaming at each other, arguing over who cheated, calling me slurs and all type of nonsense, whatever. So that left a sour taste in my mouth, and I was just like, oh, I should have just lied. I should have just said I was a Christian and then just kept doing what I was doing anyway, because then I would have got to keep my girlfriend. But I knew it was over, it was too late, so whatever. They ended up also only lasting a year, so but this depressed me, and it was significant not because it was like I fell in love in 7th grade. This was significant because I began abusing my Adderall or my dextromethorphan. These were 50 milligram extended release pills, and I would begin taking, it started off, gradual, two, three, four. Luckily, because of my research done on, looking up drugs at the age of 11, because of uh, Austin introducing me to that song or whatever, uh, I knew how to research stuff. So I did do a little bit of research and like how much will kill me. So I didn't take that much. And I knew how to do basic math, so I was like, all right, 50 milligrams. It says don't exceed 500, so I can be like, I can take 350, 400. So instead of taking one, the prescribed amount, I started taking four, five, six, seven, and going to school. I also started realizing that the pros in the COD League would use Adderall to boost their game and basically drop, better performance games. So I started doing that. I was like, so I basically just started doing Adderall to escape my reality. And then something else I didn't mention is like, at this point, I have two goals. So by the time I'm 11, I'm like, there is no God. If he's real, he either A, doesn't exist, or no, like, either A, he doesn't exist, B, he exists, but he doesn't love me or care about me, or C, um, yeah, mainly kind of the same thing as B. Like, he exists, but he only loves other people, not me. And this is significant because I had this mindset I developed, and because I had been introduced to suicide and, depression through, social media, I decided I'm going to kill myself because I didn't like living in my mom's house. I thought, well, he talked about it in the songs, it's a thing I can do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to kill myself. Turns out it's really difficult to do that, and the only method I had was a knife, and I knew that would be really painful. Like, I didn't need to stab myself or cut myself with a knife to know that was going to be painful. I mean, I'm sure I got cut growing up, on like falling down or climbing up something metal and, ripping open a finger or something. So I knew, doing that to my neck and my arteries on my arm was going to be extremely painful. So I decided, well, I want to die. I want to kill myself. Like, this is a thing I want to do because I know I'm not going to be able to escape my mom's house. By this point, like, CPS has been involved. They don't care. The police have been involved. They don't care. We can't go to court because my mom has all the sway in the authority department, so they don't care. Like, just it's you're on your own. You're gonna have to deal with it. So this is how I dealt with it. But I decided I'm not going to be able to kill myself because that was going to be too painful, and pain is what I was running from. I was tired of pain. Like, people inflicted pain on me all the time, and I hated it. So I didn't want to freaking die like that. That sounded terrible. So, uh, I just thought to myself, if I can't kill myself, I'll just do anything and everything to escape these feelings, basically. Like, so, like, in my words at the time as a 12, 11, 12-year old kid, it was, I'm going to do whatever I want. And I mean, people tell me to do, you can grow up and be whatever you want to be anyway, so I might as well, yeah. Got told that garbage in school. And so, yeah, I was going to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, however I wanted. Obviously within reason, I didn't want to get myself in trouble or, you know, get anybody else in trouble because that would cause trouble for me indirectly. So I wasn't an idiot, but this translated to like I'm gonna smoke a bunch of cigarettes. I'm gonna stay up all night and play video games. I'm gonna watch porn as often and as much as I want, when I want, how I want, whatever. You know, in the bathroom, in my room, whatever. Cigarettes, Adderall. I'm gonna start taking a bunch of Adderall to see how high I can get. Just for the fuck of it. Whatever. And so thus began my life, basically. And so, eighth grade, super depressed. Shout out to David if you ever see this video, if you're still alive. But I had this friend, David. He was on the wrestling team. He was super awesome. He like if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure I would have made it through eighth grade. My only friend in eighth grade. Didn't have friends in school. Was the weird kid. Always wore a hoodie. Who would want to be friends with me anyway? This kid's weird. He doesn't talk. I probably smelled like cigarette smoke every single. I don't know. Forget probably. I smelled like cigarette smoke every day I come in, regardless of whether I get a shower in the morning. And if you get one at night, you're gonna be sleeping in all night, so you might as well forget it. And like Axe ain't gonna save you. Like people are still gonna smell it on you. So yeah, I just became super depressed and hated school. I just remember I started putting my head down a lot. That got me into trouble. Not too much trouble, like nothing serious, but it did get me into trouble a few times. Basically, teachers being like, "Yeah, you can't keep doing this." And so that's pretty much the extent of middle. Like this is middle school, so sixth, seventh grade. All this is happening. Also at the start of eighth grade, um, I think it was either at the start or it was towards the end. Caden ends up moving away, so there goes my access to weed. And I also did other stuff with Caden. Like the weed was just significant, dude, because I fell in love with weed, and weed would end up becoming a big part of my life. Um, but other good things that I didn't mention that I should mention. We did a lot of like before I met Caden, I was basically all I do is play video games. So then when I met Caden, he got me, riding bikes. Like I'd go over to his dad's and stepmom's. They made me feel welcome. Like obviously this is all on the weekend because he lives out here, and I can't go hang out with him when I'm at my mom's because my mom never has gas money because she spends it all on nicotine, drugs, and alcohol, and bills and food. Sorry for the pause. And so there goes my bike riding buddy, and the buddy I used to play basketball with, and I basically just revert to my lazy ways. Like I start going back to playing video games and sitting on a laptop, listening to music and doing research on drugs and whatever else, watching porn, watching YouTube, So all this is going on. He's moving away. I'm depressed. I only have one friend in high school. I think he also went to a different school too, so I didn't even get to see him. Um, my girlfriend leaves me for a quote unquote Christian, which leaves a sour taste in my mouth because I'm like, oh, hey, you should just lie to people. You don't actually have to be a Christian or live this lifestyle. Like, I didn't know the specific lifestyle. I just knew, like I said again, I'll reiterate, I just knew that that was not what Christians did. Like, hey, God isn't real, but if he is real, that's not how you live. you know, you don't, like, all the Christians I've met don't drink, don't smoke. Mainly, the only, like, main example I had was my grandma, or my other grandma anyway, my grandfather's mother, because she was a Christian. And I just knew without knowing really, like, she was always nice. Nothing ever bothered her. She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, she didn't curse. Sweetest old lady. Always made me and my cousin oatmeal. And yeah, that was one of the people I was like, okay, God exists for that person. Like, she's like, I knew she was going to heaven, regardless of the fact that I don't believe in God. So that's a little weird looking back, but yeah, there's no way God exists for me because he wouldn't let me live in this house, and yeah, he doesn't exist basically.